Hey, this is Jared Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And in this episode, I'm speaking to Nate Ginsburg from SellerPlex.com. Nate has invested in 4 different website businesses. He's also sold his own FBA business for over 7 figures. And he's worked with hundreds of businesses in the FBA space to help them max their profit for a 7-figure sale. So in this episode, Nate and I dig into setting ourselves up to sell our website businesses. And we talk about why you should be setting yourself up as early as possible to do so. Because normally with online businesses and any business owner, we have our finances and our bookkeeping all in a mess. And this really needs to be consolidated and reconciled and looked at, to ensuring that we can present that to the possible buyers of our business. So making sure we can get that done as early as possible really helps us to understand what we're doing in our business to be able to cut expenses to get a higher valuation for our business. Also cut down hours and automate the business in a certain way so the business is more attractive to the buyer as well. And we dig into so many different other concepts and things that we can be doing to set ourselves up to sell our business and get a higher multiple for it, to ensure that we win when we sell the business and the buyer wins by buying something that's set up well and is ready to rock and roll. Enjoy the episode. If you haven't already, make sure you go away and hit the like button, subscribe to this podcast before you do go away and listen, to ensure that you get more awesome episodes like this coming straight to you. Enjoy. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And today, Nate Ginsburg is jumping on and having a chat with me. Nate, thanks so much for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad we're doing this. I know it's been in the works for a while, and here we are.
It has. Finally, we've been backwards and forwards chatting, so I'm glad we get to do this too. We know so many people, mutual friends in the space, and we cross-pollinate with so many other things that we do. So yeah, it's good to have a chat. Helping people. You've bought a couple of sites yourself. You invest in 4 sites yourself, so you know the due diligence very well. And you've also pretty much perfected the art of selling FBA businesses. And I've seen you've done quite well for yourself and helping some other people. So in this episode, we're going to talk about sort of getting your site ready to sell, because I know we talk heavy on the buy side, but then there's people that don't think about the end game as well. So talk to me more about, like, I guess this is a general overall question and we'll dig into it deeper, but how do you know when it's the right time to sell based on other people's like goals? They might be financial goals, flipping, or long-term. How do you know like when's the right kind of time to sell? Like, where do you weigh that up as a business owner?
It really starts what your goals are. And the thing is, like, in any, business endeavor, I think it's really, really important to think and identify of what your goals are when you're starting, and like, what does success look like? Not necessarily failure. I mean, it's a lot of, gray area, I think, but just like, what are you going for? For example, is your goal to, have $1 million into your pocket, and so you can retire, or 2 mil, or whatever that number is. And like, if your goal is to pocket $2 million, and the reason is because you want to be set financially and you don't have, you don't want to worry about needing to make money or whatever, like, then if that's your goal, I think like it could be a good time to sell when you've achieved that, but if your goal is maybe it's having enough income, or, income exceeding your expenses, and you want your portfolio, your businesses, if income is more your goal, then question, like, maybe selling isn't what, you kind of table that thought or kind of discussion. I mean, one thing, in like, we work with businesses, kind of our specialty is helping e-commerce businesses to prepare for and get the most value from their exit. So like exit strategy, getting on top of financials, operations, all that kind of stuff. And like, we're experienced and love to help people get ready for their exits, but everybody shouldn't exit their business. Like, some people, if they have a great business and it's giving them good cash flow and they've built it, they built it the right way where they could have an exit. It's also just like building a good business that you can, it takes not too much of your time, and it's well organized and well run and it's profitable. So yeah, I mean, the ways that we like, I'd say that people, whether or not they want to have an exit, they should be building for an exit. In terms of when the time, I guess this is kind of a long roundabout answer, but getting back to say, depending on what your goals are. And so knowing what your goals are and like keeping that in mind could dictate when you want to exit, as well as if you see the business like peaking
Yeah.
and, on the
just
way,
hitting past the bell curve there.
yeah, if you see future growth opportunities is going to be less than what they have been in the past, that's a good time to kind of think about selling.
I like the goals, like really focusing and understanding where your goals are and always revising back to what your goals are, because goals change, right? Like when people join my community, I say you've got two goals that you want to achieve. You got lifestyle goals and you got financial goals. And when this is where I see it, is if somebody's going to want to change their lifestyle goals or their financial goals and they've revised them, if the business that you're in isn't helping you achieve that, how can you manipulate it or change it to be able to achieve those goals that you've set out? Or how do you set it up for exit so you can take that money and move closer towards those lifestyle goals and those financial goals? So I'm really big, and thanks for mentioning the goals thing, because I'm huge on making sure that we're always aligned with our goals, because so many of us, I feel, Nate, and this is personally, and this is what I see before I even got into investing in website businesses. People are chasing success. And sometimes when they chase success, they move further away from fulfillment and they never come back and revise what is actually going to help them be fulfilled. And they may even have like an awesomely successful business, like I'm making 10 mil a year, 8 figures, awesome, burning on the inside. So obviously that's probably an indicator or a red flag on time to sell, right? So the next question, I guess, is you get people that come to you and they're like, I want to sell my business, and you have to put the hard work on and say like, hang on, why is it really the right thing to do? I guess more often than not, it is the right thing for your client. So you move on and help them. What's the sort of first step that you do? Do you look at their books? Do you look at their operations? And then do you look at tightening things up, cutting things down? Like, where do you normally go with that?
Yeah, good question. And so in order to sell a business, like necessarily there are two pieces that you need to have in place. And that's going to be, you need to have clean, clear, complete financials, as well as, an operations or a business that's not dependent on you to run. And so, you obviously got to be on top of the financials that is clear, verified, up to date, in order to accurately get a evaluation. And I mean, it's like you need to come up with a valuation as well as to pass due diligence when you ultimately make the sale. And then having the business that is not dependent on you to run, also kind of obvious that like if you're selling this and someone else is going to be taking it over, if it's dependent on you to run, then they're not going to be able to do that. And so those are like the two kind of broad categories. We work mostly with e-commerce and FBA businesses. And so generally they are more transferable. If you're using Fulfillment by Amazon, their warehouses, most e-commerce businesses, I mean, we do see some that like, for example, their grandma is the one who's, shipping out a product, but like most of the ones that we work with, they're either using FBA warehouses or, have their own warehouse. And that's a huge part of the not dependent on you to run. And I mean, one of the benefits of, online businesses in general are going to be more transferable. Sales are being made online. They're not physically doing something to perform that. It's going to be easier to transfer. And so still can be some things that need to be done, in order to like check that box. But most e-commerce businesses and online businesses in general, easier, more transferable. And then we have the finance side. So this is the one that we see a lot of businesses are, needs more work to be done. And so, we work with, and just kind of for context, a lot of the businesses that we work with, like to prepare for an exit, are going to be 7 and some even 8-figure brands. And so generally bigger, we do and have worked with earlier ones, but I guess businesses at a couple different stages, some that come to us, and like we have some relationships with brokers that like they want to sell, they want to go to market, they want to sell ASAP. And so for them, those are usually bigger, multi-seven figure or bigger brands. And pretty surprising how
ugly
often,
their books are.
yeah, I mean, how often they're not on top of, they're using some half put together spreadsheets or notepads, or they're not even in QuickBooks or Xero, or have their personal expenses mixed with this and that. And like, it's just often is quite messy. Yeah. And so that's, in those instances, they really, we have to go in and often what happens is it's like, we have to do reconstruction work, right? And so we have to go back and redo or really like set up their financials for the previous like 2 years. In that case, it's a process, and I have my finance team that like, like I said, we're like, e-commerce is our jam, good accountants and understand other business models. But like with e-commerce especially, it's tricky having to deal with cost of goods, I guess from an accounting standpoint, how you calculate inventory and where that goes on the balance sheet and this and that.
Currency rates and everything. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, and we've had like working with some of these bigger, even multi-7 and 8-figure brands, like we get exposed to a lot of tricky situations. And like you said, with currency, we were working with a business recently that like they had Canadian dollar accounts and USD accounts and something in QuickBooks. The conversion, it would like wasn't originally set up with the conversion to be correct, and there was confusion around things weren't matching up because it was actually CAD and not USD. And like when it comes to the accounting and getting these businesses like prepped financially, there's a lot of little things that can go wrong, or that you could be doing wrong, or that could be where there could be mistakes. And this is one of those things where like when it comes to getting the finances for a business that you're preparing for sale, like the 80-20 is not good enough. It like needs to actually be done totally 100%. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Otherwise, and it's like the buyer in due diligence, like that could kill the deal. That could, totally change the valuation. And so it's really important to get it done right. And a lot of people, aren't. And so
most people aren't. Like if you look at most business owners, their books will be all over the place. It's just overall outstanding number of people or business owners that are like that. I mean, I've been there where my books have been terrible. I've had them all reconciled and looking all good, and they're good now. But I know only because I know what it takes to get it ready to sell. For example, there may be people that will come to you and they're like, Nate, I need to sell within this time frame. And you might be like, you handing me here like a hospital ball, and I need to fix this because you could go bankrupt without selling your business in this time frame. And I think people just underestimate the amount of time that it can take to move things around in your business to get it ready to sell. Not only is that important so it does sell, but I really want to talk about how important it is so you can get more money for the business you do sell as well. For example, you talked about if my nan's shipping out all of my products from her garage, somebody who that's not so attractive to a buyer. So you need to have things in place where the owner only spends a few hours per week on it, and then you can sell it easier and get a higher multiple. Yeah. Same with the books, right? What are some of the other things that, even not just what I talked about there, but based off that, can help you get a higher multiple too?
Yeah, well, so there's actually, a lot of related and valuable things, when it comes to the numbers. And so one of them is like we said, a business that just wants to sell, like you need to check that box. It needs to be done, needs to be correct, needs to be complete in order to be able to go to market. And so that's one piece. And like, we do work with businesses that like want to sell ASAP, and we clean it up, and, they want to like clean up so they can list. And that's fine. But where, really we like working with businesses more is earlier in that process. And so ideally they're thinking about like they want to have an exit maybe 1 year out, 2 years out, maybe even more. We like starting to work with and engage businesses that, want to exit in the future, and like maybe they have some type of a timeline, but it's not like ASAP. And there's a couple different benefits of getting started earlier in that. Is one, it's going to be a lot easier getting on top of the financials to be on track moving forward is a lot easier than having to redo 2 years of financials. And so it's a lot easier to like, all right, we'll get you, set up and onboarded, and, a couple $100s a month moving forward, you'll be on track, versus having to retroactively do 2 years. And then it's like, all right, now we're looking at thousands of dollars, and it also takes time. And anyways, we like getting started earlier because it's easier and cheaper for everyone. But then when you have good financials, and this is something that I, for all the businesses that I partner and involved with, like every month necessarily, I want to look through their P&L, their profit and loss statement. And when you have a good P&L, that can really give you, insight into opportunities of how you can improve the business, decrease costs, where you can double down and increase revenue. And so that's stuff where really, when you have those clear optics, it's not, the biggest opportunity isn't just to check the box. So yes, you can sell. The biggest opportunity is being able to have this data that you can review and see, oh, wow, like I can cut off trim expenses here. I can restructure this here. I can make more money here. And then you're really talking about adding value to the business and being able to sell for more and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for those who are just listening to what you said, is like having understanding of the P&Ls and being able to move from a position of knowing what's going on in your business. This is called a dashboard. I've done dashboard trainings for people in my community. Maybe I should do a podcast on this alone, because just thinking here, there may be people that have come to you, Nate, that have been like, hey, I want to sell my business, and there's so many moving parts. You reconcile, put everything together, and they've got this P&L and maybe a dashboard with their numbers and stuff like that, and they understand it, and they can see that they've got, just by being conscious of something. Let's say, for example, if I go to the doctor and I didn't know I had cancer, that could kill me. For example, if there's a problem in my business, cancer in my business, if I wasn't conscious of that, that could kill my business. But when I become conscious of it, I can treat that, and I've got leverage to do things. The same with our business, right? So that means maybe some people might come to you and go, hey, I want to sell this down the road. You give them more consciousness and clarity in their business, and they can pull those levers to be able to take it in a different direction and grow it sporadically. And this is what I like to help my clients do in my community, is make sure they got a good dashboard so they can see all the numbers so they can scale their business. Have you ever seen somebody that's come to you and gone, hey, this is really good, I want to keep my business now?
Well, so we work with some, we do work with some people that, like, I guess it's not exit prep. It's just like getting on top of these things. And,
Cool.
maybe they do want to sell down the road, but it's like our engagement is still, and kind of back to what I was saying before, where it's like building a business so that you can sell it. I think, everybody should, whether or not you actually want to sell the business, like
it should be set up to be able to sell, right?
Exactly. And like back to those two things that I kind of started with saying, not dependent on you to run, and clear, complete financials. Like that is, I think, good advice for every business. And because also one of the things that I think people don't always think about is that you're going to have an exit from your business one way or another, no matter what. That exit, it could be a variety of different things. You could sell on a marketplace and you get a bunch of money. Great. You also could exit the business by shutting it down if it's not working. And like, there is going to be some event. And there's also a variety of different outcomes in between those two. You could, hire a CEO to run it for you. You could, just kind of automate it. And so it's just like running and it's running passively. You could sell part of it. You could, there's a lot of different things in there, but like one day your relationship with the business is going to change. And so building it in a way that gives you, sets you up with the most potential for the outcomes that you want, as well as gives you more options I think is just good advice for anybody.
Yeah, set it up with good foundations, right? And I guess there's some people, and I've done this before, if I've bought businesses that have been on shaky foundations, for example, the one that where you're talking about your Canadian dollars and US dollars and different costs of goods. I once bought a site that was in Thai baht and US dollars and Aussie dollars. And my dad said, Jared, whatever you do, do not buy this business. It was the second business I ever bought. And I just couldn't not. I just had this great feeling about this business. Overall, it was an amazing investment. I achieved 100% return on my investment in 7 months. It was, yes, there was a bit of a risk there. I was willing to take that. But then I took that and I made sure that I could make those foundations solid. I could understand the books, and it would be a much easier asset to sell if I was to sell it. Plus, like what we're talking about is my dashboard's pretty clear where I know what I can do, how much it costs me. Should I put more money into this part of marketing because it works, or should I take it out and try something different as a bit of an experiment? And I think what you do is just such important work, not to people wanting to sell a business, but to people just wanting to have more clarity in their business, because it just makes business more stress-free or less stressful. And I think that's something that people forget about in this day and age on the quest to success, is they don't understand that they're trading stress for this success, and it's just no fun overall.
Well, totally agree with that. And, one thing that a quote, I think it's super true is, well, two things. What gets measured gets managed, and clarity kills fear. And so this was something like in the last few months with all this COVID stuff coming up, and I participated as a speaker on a handful of different virtual summits and this and that. And like a lot of I do a decent, or I was doing a good amount of speaking before, I guess when
you could, when
there was speaking, but a lot of stuff like talking about preparing a business for sale, maximizing the value for a sale. And a lot of stuff we've been talking about, getting on top of your numbers, seeing opportunities to trim expenses, increase your profit, increase your valuation. And in the, with the COVID craziness, like the same strategies and tactics are going to apply if you just want to lean down your business, tighten up your business, be more aware of your profit, just really get more on top of your business. It's very similar to what you're going to be doing if you want to maximize the value for an exit. And so this is stuff that I know, like with me and my businesses, all of them, like there was COVID kind of struck and there was all this uncertainty, and, leads were slowing down, and it was just like a lot of uncertainty with the businesses and what's happening. And with all of them, like what we did is really like dug in, and that was actually, it was like a catalyst for some of the businesses to like, get their shit together. And so dive into the business, really get clear on where the expenses were going. Is this necessary? Is this producing ROI? And, really revisit our, P&L. And in doing so, like, at least a lot of my businesses, I'm guessing, a lot of your listeners in the last 10 years leading up to this, COVID pandemic, business has been generally good, and business
we've been able to be sloppy. Yeah,
exactly. You get sloppy, expenses get fat. I admit, like my business is also, and it's like, oh, like, we'll throw some money at this and that. And we had these different contractors doing some things that it wasn't that much money, but when everything adds up and when all of a sudden we're like, all right, let's, we got to really get on top of this stuff, getting that clarity, it kills fear. And so like what we're afraid of is this uncertainty and unknown. But then when you really look at it, even in some of the businesses, we had to make adjustments, let go some staff, restructure some things. That has challenges with it, but you get rid of the fear when you have that clarity. And so that's what like being on top of your financials, in a good market, in a bad market, when things are up, down, whatever, like having that clarity, it kills fear and allows you to make informed decisions to improve the business. And it gives you like the truth of the business to allow you to, like you were saying about you go to a doctor and, you have cancer. If you don't go to a doctor, that doesn't mean that you're going to be better off for it. You're just, it's,
you're
better
unconscious of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And so better to, even if it's like a challenging situation, the more truth that you have. And this is something that I also see, and it's unfortunate, this sort of pattern that I even notice in myself is that when things aren't going well, our tendency is to like pay less attention to sales, less attention to expenses. You just don't want to think about it. In your mind, things aren't going well. So you don't want to focus on it, which is actually the worst thing that you can do, because then things start to slide when in reality, if you do have clear optics on these things, it's probably not going to be as bad as you're imagining it to be in your head. And when you do have that insight, you can there are going to be moves that you can make to improve your situation. And so, yeah, getting on top of this stuff, I mean, it's important.
It's so important. I directly run personal development alongside business development, because the more, the same with when you say you may resist something that's going on with leads and sales or something like that. It's the same in our personal life, is we resist something and we just start to push it over or sweep it under the rug, just going to grow mold and grow bigger and become a bigger problem over time. And, like you said before earlier in the podcast, it's just going to cost more money and more stress to fix that and get on top of it and make sure we can sell our business or move on with what we want to do, even if we do hold on to the business. So I think that you and I could do an awesome personal development podcast together one day. But yeah, I want to wrap this up. But before I do, I want to ask you, what would be 2 to 3 things that you feel that every first-time business seller every first-time seller of a business would kind of need to know or should know coming into possibly selling their business? Yeah. What's something that they should have in their toolkit or should understand at a deeper level before they even maybe come to you or somebody else or go down the route of a sale?
Yeah. So a couple of things to think about, and some of them, we touched on, but one is, again, is what are your goals? And so in expanding on that of what are your goals and why do you want to sell? And kind of having an idea, because this happened to me. I sold a business a couple of years ago, which was it was a great event and, opportunity. And I'm really grateful to have had that, outcome. But I've been there after you sell a business and it's all right, great. You've got this cash, but then what do you do? Mm-hmm. For me, that, was the catalyst of this whole existential, what's important? What am I good at? Where do I go? Who should I be? All this kind of stuff, which is not uncommon for people when they sell a business. And so would encourage, and there's a lot of great worthwhile reasons to sell a business as well as to hold on to it, but just kind of being aware of these things and know that when you sell, money's great. Even a good friend of mine recently in the last couple months sold a business for 8 figures. This is life-changing money. And we were catching up after it and he was saying after he sold the business, he'd everything, money in the bank, deal done, completed. And he's oh yeah, I danced and screamed around my apartment for maybe 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden it was kind of back to, normal-ish, or he had a lot more money in his bank, but it's all right, well, I'm still me, I'm still here, and so kind of being aware of that stuff and thinking about that a little bit beforehand. And yeah, and I'd say for anybody that's considering an exit, I think it's I think that everybody, if they want to exit, they should do what they can to make the most of that opportunity. And so in a way to do that is going to be having clarity on your numbers, on your financials, and doing things like we were also talking about to give yourself the most value. Every $1,000 that you save in expenses, when you sell, if you sell for a 30X, it's going to be $30,000 onto the price of the business. And so being a little proactive in instead of saying oh crap, I want to sell tomorrow, just take it as it is. Give yourself a little time and, review your expenses. What can you cut? Where can you save money? Where can you increase revenue so that, you run it for a couple of months? That could add significant value to you for your exit.
Hugely, right? For a bigger business, say in the 7-figure range, say you cut down expenses on 2 to 3 grand a month, and you sell it for 30X, it's $90K there in the pocket just by moving some things around. And then also, I think we're discounting the maybe I'm discounting, sorry, the amount of work involved for the owner. Like, it's so attractive. I know because I buy sites, and so do my clients, are so attracted to buy a site where there's very little work to be done and little staff and, to manage, and it's taking control of. Like, the operations is not a big, long laundry list of things to do. I know that definitely helps the business be more valuable. And I want to come back to your thing again, just to close this episode on what's next. Like, when you sell something, I feel that it's such a good point that your friend made and you've made as well, is who am I as a person? What am I doing here? Like, do I have a purpose and all that sort of stuff? I think that people can get trapped if you don't have a good, strong mindset, like yourself and your friend can get trapped on, like, do I have a purpose? Do I have anything to move on to next? And I think that's probably something people should have set up, or at least be thinking about before they get a big pile of money landing in their lap, so to speak. Nate, thank you so much for jumping on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I feel like we could just keep talking on and on and on and learning so much more. Where can people find out more from you, or where can people get in contact with you and what you do?
Yeah, thanks for the chat. It was a blast. For me, you can, if you're interested in selling businesses or any of these services that we talked about, SellerPlex.com, where we do the finance and operations stuff, as well as I have my own podcast about e-com exits called e-com exits, where if you're interested in, learning more about, kind of on the sell side, yeah, check it out there.
He has an awesome podcast, guys. Check that out. I'm going to put a link to the podcast and to SellerPlex as well. Very good website. I was just on it before, SellerPlex.com. Check that out. Everybody, thank you for listening. If you haven't already, please do me and the audience a massive favor by subscribing and leaving a review, so I can know what you guys actually like about this show, so I can bring more awesome guests like Nate and more awesome information and chats to the podcast for you guys. Thanks again for listening. See you on the next one.